how can one rationally analyze a miracle? And the reason I am asking this question is, like I said, most often people read into incidents as miracles. For example, given the definition that we have about miracles, a resurrection would categorize as a miracle because that overpowers the natural law. About someone being delivered from cancer, does that account as a miracle?
It depends. It could be natural laws taking their course. It could be a miracle. It could be divine providence. See, let me just list real quickly. We don't have time to discuss all of them, but let me list the 6 types of unusual events. Right. Magic, sleight of hand, right? Anomalies, which you can't explain naturally right now, but there is a natural explanation. Another would be satanic signs. We mentioned that already. Another would be psychosomatic. People have been cured by just changing their thinking on something because they had a psychosomatic disease, right? The 5th one is called divine providence. That's when God is involved, but he doesn't overpower a natural law. And the 6th is, of course, a miracle where God does overpower a natural law. Quite frequently, Christians will confuse the last 2 and call them miracles. Divine providence is not a miracle. God's not overpowering a natural law. He may have prearranged events, so God is involved, but he's not overpowering a natural law. Like some people will say, well, it's a miracle that I met my wife. And I'll say, no, it might have been divine providence that God prearranged natural events so that you meet your wife, but it wasn't a miracle that you met her unless she walked across the lake on the way to meet you, right? On top of the lake. Now that would be a miracle. Okay. But no, it's divine providence. God is involved, but he's not overpowering the natural law.
So with the same logic, when we look at the parting of the Red Sea, would you categorize as a divine providence or a miracle? Because isn't it, now I'm going to take a point of a devil's advocate for a moment. Yeah. Isn't it possible that there could have been a strong wind that blew at that particular time that just happened to part the Red Sea? What would you say to that?
Well, actually, that's what the text says, that God caused a strong, I think, east wind to come up, which parted the Red Sea. But in that context, where, okay, the Israelites are up against the sea and they're about to be obliterated by Pharaoh's army, and Moses gestures to part the Red Sea and it happens, that really seems to be an act of God, not just a natural law, even though God may have used natural processes for it to happen. And then they get through the sea, and then the wind stops and it closes in on Pharaoh's army. That just seems a little bit too coincidental to be just a coincidence, right? that would be tautology there. It's a coincidence to be a coincidence. You get the idea. It seems to be designed. All right. It seems to be designed. So yeah, God can use natural processes to perform his supernatural events directly. But say the difference between divine providence and a miracle would be like, say, the fog at Normandy. In 1944, the Allies had to assault Europe to rescue the European continent from the Nazis. And fog rolled in at the right time at Normandy to at least partially obscure the Allied attack on the Nazis. Now, fog happens all the time. What's that?
Was that on the D-Day?
Yeah, on D-Day, exactly. Fog happens all the time, but it happened at the right time in the right place at an unusual time in June. And it may not have been a miracle. God is not overpowering a natural law because fog does happen all the time. But it seemed to occur at the right place in the right time for a reason. And it wasn't a miracle in the sense that he overpowered a natural law. It would have been a miracle if the Allied forces had assaulted the beach and the bullets bounced off their chests, right? That would have been a miracle. Or they walked across the water on the way into Normandy. That would have been a miracle. It wasn't a miracle in that sense. It was more like divine providence.